and welcome. My name is Jasmine Wilson, and I am the District Conservationist for Team 9. I am the supervisor over the Las Cruces, Alamogordo, and TRC field office. I am stationed out of the Las Cruces field office. I would like to take a moment to thank you for tuning in as we discuss the Conservation Stewardship Program. Some objectives of this presentation will be an introduction to the agency, so that is going to give you a little brief background history on how our agency came about. We will then touch on some of the assistance that our agency offers, both financial and technical. We'll go into depth about the CSP program, how to apply for the program, what to expect during the application process, and lastly, who you will be working with. With the Great Depression, many lost their jobs, and that meant many farmers went back home to farm. They used conventional farming methods, meaning they were plowing the soil and leaving no residue, leaving the soil very bare. That, coupled with drought conditions, led to what is now called the Dirty 30s or the Dust Bowl era. This was because soil from Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas blew all the way to Washington, D.C. Hugh Hammett Bennett, known as the father of soil conservation, decided that this was a big issue, and in 1933, the Soil Erosion Service was established. The Soil Erosion Service focused on educating the farmers on more conservative methods of farming and the importance of leaving residue on the soil surface. They used test plots to educate farmers, which allowed the farmers to see the benefits of these conservative practices. In 1935, the Soil Conservation Service was established when President Roosevelt signed the Soil Conservation Act, making the Soil Conservation Service a federal agency. This is when the focus of educational test plots shifted to providing financial assistance through programs. By 1994, the agency realized we were addressing more than soil resource concerns, and the name was changed to Natural Resources Conservation Service, also known as the NRCS. So while working with conservationists with our agency, you will hear them say resource concerns a lot. If it's not addressing our resource concerns 9 times out of 10, we will not be able to assist you. A resource concern is a resource that is expected to degrade at a rate that's not acceptable by our planning criteria. Our planning criteria is all science-based. We are a science-based agency, and the planning criteria is what our conservationists are using to be able to justify contracting certain practices on a farmer or rancher's operation. We use an acronym called SWAPA, SWAPA. Plus HE. That stands for soil, water, air, plants, animals, with the consideration of human and energy. Those are all the resource categories that NRCS can now financially and technically assist participants with. So, technical assistance is actually what the SES was founded on. Education. This is where your planner will come to your operation and develop a conservation plan. You're discussing your goals, the concerns you may have, and developing a conservation plan. This is a living document, so this will be changed as goals are obtained and as your goals may change as well. So for the next slide, we have our priority resource concerns for our CSP program. As you'll see, we have 8 priority resource concerns for the ag land and 8 priority resource concerns for our non-industrial private forest land. So these priority resource concerns will play a major role in determining the applicant's eligibility and also the dollar amount that the contract will be allocated at time of obligation. So now we'll touch on what CSP actually is. So CSP helps ag producers, and it helps them maintain and improve their existing conservation operation. And then it also gives them the opportunity to adopt additional practices. Those practices are typically enhancements, which are management practices that take your conservation practice to the next level. So a little brief eligibility breakdown for the CSP program. It is a 5-year contract, and you need to have control of the land for the life of the contract. You need to meet 2 priority resource concerns at the time of application, and then by the end of the application, you will be addressing, exceeding, or meeting an additional resource concern. As I mentioned before, enhancements are typically management practices that are taking a conservation practice to the next level. They are designed to maintain or exceed the planning criteria or stewardship level for that resource concern. There are over 200 enhancements that are eligible to be selected based on land use and the resource concerns noted on your operation. You will need to work very closely with your conservationist to determine what enhancements would be best for your operation. Here on this slide, you can see listed a few different land uses and some enhancements that would be applicable for the resource concern selected. For example, if you had an erosion concern, you could pick an enhancement to convert some cropland to grassland. There are many enhancements that you can work with your conservationist to determine the best fit for you. As previously mentioned, this program is a 5-year contract. You must control the land for the entire length of the contract. If awarded a contract, you will receive 5 annual payments. The payments are based off of 2 components. One being a payment for maintaining your existing level of conservation, and then an additional payment for implementing the conservation enhancement selected at the time of application. All contracts at minimum will receive an annual payment of $1,500 and a max payment of $40,000. At the end of your 5-year contract, you will have the opportunity to renew your contract for an additional 5 years. With the renewal, you commit to take the work done in the original contract and keep that as a baseline, in addition to addressing and adopting new enhancements. So who's eligible to apply? As you can see on the slide, all of these individuals, joint operations, Indian tribes, and legal entities are all eligible to apply for this program. You don't have to have a certain size operation. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter the type of operation that you have. The only person that I would say or entity that wouldn't be eligible are those who make over $900,000 AGI. So now that you know that you're eligible to apply for CSP, you might wonder, how do I go about applying? So first, you'll need to visit or call your local NRCS field office and speak with the conservationist to determine if this is the best fit for you. Prior to submitting your application and maps of your operation, you will need to ensure that you have farm records established with FSA. This is our sister agency. If you don't have farm records established prior to submitting your application, NRCS will have to give your application back until the records are established. Once they're established, then we can get you into our system. So let's talk a little bit about what to expect during the application process. After you submit your application, you will then work with your conservationist to collect inventory of your operation and determine the resource concerns to address in the application. This stage of the application process will help determine if you're eligible for CSP. Remember, you have to have met 2 priority resource concerns at the time of application and plan to meet or exceed an additional resource concern by the end of the contract. You will also discuss the enhancements that will be most applicable to your operation. This will determine if you're going to meet or exceed an additional resource concern by the end of your contract. When the enhancements have been determined for your application is then ranked. If you have ranked high enough to be determined as funded, you will be notified by your planner that you are in pre-approved status. Next, the area staff will come to your operation and complete a field verification. During the field verification, they will review the enhancements selected and also verify the benchmark inventory collected by the conservationist is accurate. After field verifications are complete, your conservationist will contact you when contract documents are ready for signature. So once funded and obligated into contract, you will be expected to maintain and keep records for the enhancements that you've selected. At the end of the year, you'll then bring that to the conservationist. They will review it and ensure that it's meeting all the requirements to receive your annual payment. Your annual payment is determined off of what enhancements that you selected, but the max that the contract can be allocated is at $200,000. So that would be a $40,000 annual payment for the next 5 years. Lastly, I would like to let you know who you will be working with when working with the Las Cruces Field Office. We have Casey Myers, who is our soil conservationist, and most likely that is who you will be working with during the CSP application process. We then have Garrett Johnson, who is our Farm Bill technician, Vicki Ligon, who is our Farm Bill specialist, who you will also be working with to help you get your eligibility documents in on time. And then lastly, you have myself, Jasmine Wilson, the district conservationist. Thank you again for taking time out to go over CSP. So now joining me, we have Rachel Ryan with Backyard Farms, and she is here to ask a few questions about the CSP program. Thank you, Rachel, for joining.
Oh, thank you, Jasmine, for having me.
You're welcome.
So as a small farmer in the Mesilla Valley, if I were to apply and get in the CSP program, how are the payments conducted? Are they a reimbursement basis, or do we get a flat check at the beginning of the program?
So it's not a flat check at the beginning of the program. It would be more so a reimbursement. So at the end of the year, once you've gathered all your documentation for your enhancements, you'll present that to the conservationist, and then after they've gone through the paperwork and see that it's eligible for payment, that's when you'll receive your annual payment.
Okay. Do we need to keep receipts for any of the purchases, for seeds or any of the equipment?
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt, because I know in policy, if you are audited, you may need to present that at a later date.
So hang on to those for the 5 years of the program?
Yes.
Okay. So Jasmine, how long does the application process normally take?
The application process, it differs based on the fiscal year, but roughly it'll take about 8 months. So our CSP application deadline was January 15th. For fiscal year 21. So that's this current fiscal year to be considered. Okay. So applications were taken on the 15th, and they probably will be obligated no later than end of August.
So Jasmine, for fiscal year 2022, a farmer should really start planning in July of 2021.
Yes, I would say so. Now, I will preface this with that would be like the heart of the busy season for most applicant or for planners, because they're working on that current year applications. But I would say since our fiscal year starts October 1, the producer needs to be in the office inquiring about the new sign up.
Okay.
Because shortly after, that's when we'll get our deadlines.
Okay. And when would be a good time to contact the FSA to start getting our paperwork, our farmlands registered and track numbers?
I would say the moment that you have an interest in any type of program.
Okay.
The agency, yes. So you can get that started now to be considered for the new fiscal year, yes. And that will make your process for application for CSP that much smoother.
Okay, good to know. So Jasmine, does a farmer get to know what their score is? Do they hear back from their planner how the cart has rated their application?
Yes, they will receive that feedback from their conservationist. Typically, historically, the planner is so busy that they don't get a chance to go through each and every ranking score with every applicant. But if the actual applicant would, bring that up to the planner, like, hey, I would like to know what my ranking score was. Can we go through how I ranked? They would be more than happy to assist you with that.
So Jasmine, as part of the application, do we need to have a farm visit?
Yes, ma'am. You would need to have a site visit scheduled. So once you've determined that you want to apply for CSP, while you're working with the conservationist, that's when you can set up an appointment to take a visit to your operation. So you'll have 2 visits, so to speak. The initial one to determine your benchmark inventory, and then if you rank high enough, you'll then have our area staff coming out to your operation to do field verifications.
Okay. Are lands treated differently in the CSP program if they're under crop production versus animal production?
No, they aren't. They're all ranked as ag land. The only difference would be if you had private and non-industrial forest land, because those are a whole different set of different resource concerns.
Okay. Does it matter if you apply as an individual or as a business, such as your farm?
No, it does not matter. You will be serviced the same, and it's just personal preference and what works best for you.
Okay. And does it matter if it's a for-profit ranch or a non-profit ranch or farm?
No, it does not matter. It will be treated the same as if it were for-profit or nonprofit. You'll get the same service.
Okay. So is there a minimum amount that a farm needs to make to qualify for the program?
No, there isn't a minimum amount, but there is a max. So if you're making an adjusted gross income of over $900,000, you wouldn't be eligible for NRCS programs.
I'm a small farmer and I don't own any of my land. I rent all of my properties. Does this still qualify for the CSP program?
Yes, it does, with the caveat that you get permission from the actual owner of that land. So what you would need to do is get a form signed, and we have a standard form that you can give the owner or your owners to pretty much give you permission to incorporate and implement the CSP practices and enhancements.
For the full 5 years of the program?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so that's very critical that you have that control of the land for the duration of the contract.
The full time?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So what is the difference between a conservationist and a planner for the CSP program?
They are one and the same. I apologize, I use them interchangeably, but a conservationist, soil conservationist, and a planner, they're all the same position.
So it'll be one person that the farmer will be working with?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful.
So thank you, Rachel, for your questions. Do you have any others that you would like addressed?
Not at the moment, no. You answered them all.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, I just wanted to thank you all for participating in our Conservation Stewardship Program presentation. If you guys have any questions, we will have 2 Zoom sessions, one February 9th and the other March 9th. These will be live sessions for you to ask your questions, and I will be able to provide answers. Thank you again.